All right, I want to tell you more about the inner critic in general. It's one of the most common and basic elements of the human process. Without it, we wouldn't suffer so much, but we also wouldn't grow. A fate worse than you might imagine. Now, Bob had an unconscious inner critic. He didn't even know it was there. This is one of 3 different types of processes with the critic. It was illustrated by how he initially suffered its effects, but had no awareness of the critic itself. This is why he said he was depressed for no reason. No reason means you're simply unaware of your process. The second type happens when someone doesn't have a critic. He or she is the critic. They don't say, I have an inner critic saying mean things to me and it makes me feel bad. But rather, I'm no good, I'm unattractive, nobody loves me, I'm never going to amount to anything, as if these are self-evident truths. There's no dialogue, only a monologue. They're unconscious of having a critic because they are it. I've had clients who I tried to help by getting them to dialogue with their critic, but it was of no use because they were so identified with it that its voice was experienced purely as their own thoughts. There was only one part in their awareness instead of 2. In these cases, I had to use other interventions. The third kind of process is what Bob eventually discovered, which is awareness of the critic as a part of your mind you can interact with and transform. When you do this, you'll be able to not only integrate your power like Bob did, but also discover something else. Your critic isn't only bad. It starts out that way because it's trying to get your attention, but its underlying aim is to get you to grow. I totally get that you want to silence its mean, hurtful, ignorant words. But your critic is a sign of a deeper process, and silencing it cuts you off from this process. As counterintuitive as it sounds, your critic is trying to get you to expand your consciousness in order to develop authentic self-love and personal power. I know, it sounds paradoxically crazy. I mean, how could something that victimizes you aim at these positive outcomes? Well, you have to think of it in terms of process, not in terms of the initial condition you find yourself in. Your critic picks up on any area of your life you aren't totally conscious and evolved in and attacks you for it, with the implicit goal of pushing you to wake up. It stirs the pot, instigates, irritates, and makes trouble to draw your attention to the things you need to become more aware of. Stand up to your critic's nastiness, but also explore and process what it attacks you for. Just trying to be positive or use mind tricks to zap it away is a noble attempt at self-love, but it's not as true as the real thing. To discover this, you have to process it. Sometimes a critic attacks you simply because you have an internal power vacuum. You don't own your power, so your critic takes over, owns it, and uses it against you. For example, if you're someone who identifies as passive and super easygoing, you might have a powerful inner critic who always puts you down. It's your split-off power turning against you. In this case, you have to work on integrating your power, intellectual, emotional, physical, etc. Other times, a critic will paradoxically judge you for being a certain way, when in fact, you need to be more that way. It picks up on the fact that you don't fully embrace this part of yourself, so it sticks a knife in to get your attention. In this case, you have to get to know, understand, love, support, and celebrate this part of who you are. For example, the critic says you're too loud, but in reality, you're not loud enough. Your process is to fully embrace your huge personality. Another kind of process is where your critic tells you that no one will ever stay with you in a relationship. It attacks you in this way in order to push you into trusting yourself more on your own. Your critic is your crucible, the field in which you have the opportunity to awaken and become a more aware and whole person. But now, if the aim is to generate such positive change, why does it happen in such an awful way? Why can't the critic be your ally and just help you directly? The reason is that it's an unconscious energy and therefore doesn't know what it wants. It's simply driven to irritate you. It needs you to process it. Think of it as a child trying to communicate something without being conscious of what it needs. You're the parent who has to decipher the meaning. To do this, you have to engage with the critic, not try to zap it away.